Welcome. And today we're going to be talking about how to use online forums and social media for advocacy work and to help people as a clinician to provide a lot more access to people where they look to find that kind of help. And to discuss this, I have with me Dr. Rosenna Bakari, and she's a psychologist. She's the founder of Talking Trees, which was founded in 2010. It's the first organization to encourage survivors of childhood sexual abuse and incest to live openly. She's also written 5 books related to wellness, including her memoir. So, Dr. Bakari, thanks so much for joining us. And I really look forward to this interview with you.
Thank you. It's always exciting to be here. Appreciate you. And just so the audience knows, if it quiets down, I will take these earphones off because they're a bit cumbersome, even for me. But we got some lawn mowing going on out there, so
Yeah,
maybe they'll be done before we are.
yeah. They mow our lawns on Monday, and it always kind of hits me by surprise, even though it's on the same day every week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I really appreciate the work that you're doing because you can explain it better than anybody in terms of the need. So people struggle with particular things in their life and they seek for support online. They don't necessarily go to a therapist, they may, but people every day, all day, right? We're searching the web for help and assistance and support and information. And sometimes it's hard to find the appropriate information or the appropriate help that's not going to be, hurtful, harmful. So the social media arena is just an incredible opportunity for clinicians to help people. So I was wondering if you could just share with why is it that you started Talking Trees, and if you could help us understand that need and opportunity that's out there.
Sure, absolutely. So I started talking trees 3 years into my own healing journey when I started living openly as a survivor. And what happened is that in order for me to access the information that I was looking for, like everybody else, I went looking online. There were two organizations, both out of Canada, and there was not any information regarding getting help. And keep in mind, this is in 2000, this is before 2010. And so I was forced to go to the research journals. That worked well for me as a clinician. But what I was finding is that all this important information out there was not filtering back to the people who needed it most. So I created Talking Trees in 2010. And because one of the things I wanted to do was filter back information, like how is it that we get to show up in the research journals, but the information that's useful doesn't get filtered back to the people who need it most. And so I wanted to do that. And at that time, we were just getting going strong with online platforms, kind of. I mean, when I started Talking Trees and formed the Facebook group for it, I think you were allowed like 120 characters, something like that. So I used those 120 characters to help people understand what their experiences were according to what researchers were beginning to understand. Right. And I wrote every single day because people needed information. I understood, as a result of my own journey, I understood how continuing to live in silence deepens the trauma. There was no reason to live in silence when there were 40 million adult survivors. Now there are 60 million adult survivors. So it doesn't make sense that we live so isolated. So the social media is getting a hold of that. They're finally getting it. They're getting that piece of it. We don't have to be isolated. And so social media platforms really closes that gap. So that was one of the reasons why I created that, to close the gap, to provide research based information and support for people, and to invite people out of a space of silence in a world where everyone else was requiring their silence. So, those are the reasons I created the online platform in 2010.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it came out of, a personal need, which a lot of the stuff that we do as clinicians does, right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
like starting my training institute, it started out of my own personal need. I was trying to find training in telemental health, and I'm like, man, I'm really struggling here. I had to go, into the own my I had to go into the research articles, the studies, and
Yes.
so I'm like, well, I guess I'll put this together, right? So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, and doing it that way, it really changed the way I saw mental health. It changed the way I saw us approaching it. And I think that's going to continue to be another big shift in how we see people, as opposed to, especially when we're engaging online and trying to meet people where they are. So that's really what I think this whole um, online platform does, is it takes us out of some traditional ways of thinking about how people are seeking help, and it puts us in a position to go to where the people are seeking help, which changes the game, if you will, than when people walk into our door asking for help. And so I think you will see more of this practitioner client type of roles that people are starting to play. I was talking with a client recently, and she was saying one of the reasons she found me, she was so excited to find me, is because she was in a group uh, of people who were raised in foster care. She said that group was guided by two people who were raised in foster care and and understood the struggle. And they were psychologists, they were clinicians. But again,
That's the
uh,
best way, right?
right. And
Yeah.
so people are beginning to understand the significance and the value of these dual roles that we play, which traditionally have been kind of frowned upon.
And when you say dual role, you mean like kind of like the out in public
The,
role,
the
and
living openly, it's the living openly part, right? Like
right,
I
right,
think,
rather than, hey, you have to pay for a session or you have to get access to these research studies or something like that.
right. But no, I'm saying, like, I personally have experienced this, and I'm open about my personal
Oh, I see.
experience.
Yes, open
So that's
about
what I
your
mean.
personal, yeah, your
Right.
personal
Yeah.
experience is
Right.
that dual role, the dual role
Yes.
of I've been there myself. I am here
Yes.
myself.
Yes.
Yeah, but also the practitioner.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah. And
right.
so we've somewhat frowned upon that in the past, right?
I
We've
see.
kind of,
Yep.
it's been one
Sure.
way. So that's one of the ways that I think which the practice is sort of reforming, reshaping a little bit. And there are some questions, issues we'll have to work out in the process of coming at
Mhm.
it this way. But what I seem to find at least, is that this is really what clients are sort of seeking more of, not
Mhm.
less of.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and some clinicians are using social media, but not in a good way or not in a healthy way. And then some clinicians are using it in a very helpful way. So I like how you're thoughtful about the process of, what your role is there, what the intention is. It's focused on being helpful and providing, research-based information.
Yes.
Yeah, letting people know that you have your own story and you have your memoir. But then when you're reaching out to people on the social media platforms, it's coming from a clinician's mindset of what's best for them.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes clinicians, you've seen on social media where they just not really think, it seems like maybe not necessarily have thought through the process and just kind of put stuff out there. Um, yeah, so that's fantastic. And you can you tell us about the impact? So it sounds like, people, I know people all the time look online for self-help and for support. So yeah, there's people really eager. So why, you know, is there a really large population that seeks help that way, and they do not seek help in the kind of formal set up an appointment kind of way? Or is that like an entry point sometimes for them to begin seeking treatment? Or what's it like out there with people seeking help?
I think it broadens the accessibility for all of those people. So I get, and my online group has now grown, has now grown to over 7,000. And again, that's a living openly, which is, first of all, amazing given the silence that people live with, right? That people are willing to engage. So it just allows for so much accessibility. So, for example, because it's international, I have people all over the world who are in some places where there is literally nothing accessible to them as a survivor. And then I have people who have gone to traditional therapy, quite a few go to traditional therapy, but it doesn't address being a survivor. So they go for the things that are salient in their lives that they are struggling and challenged with. But oftentimes their counselor either doesn't do a good enough job at helping them address past issues. And so they want to be in a community where people, they know people understand them. So oftentimes they come already having a therapist, and that doesn't change. That doesn't change that relationship. It usually is something additional. Sometimes people end up here and realizing, oh, I need to go to therapy. So it allows for all of the magic to happen because someone invited you into a space of healing in a way that you haven't been invited before. So a
Mhm.
door gets open and then you kind of decide where that door leads to.
Yeah, so some clinicians might set up their own site to provide this kind of support, right? Or like utilize a social media platform and have a page on that social media platform to provide this. But then other clinicians can probably be very helpful online just by simply being a visitor, a participant on an online group, and help provide some guidance and support in that way. Is that right?
Absolutely. What I think is important when for clinicians who are ready, because I get that this isn't everybody's jam, right? It's not going to be, but particularly clinicians who want to do any type of advocacy work, is recognizing that that advocacy work is outside of your door, right? The advocacy work is outside of your door, and being online is the way you go outside of your door. And so you're right. There are several ways I can go outside of my door. I can create my own platform. And especially if I have something that I think people that's missing out there, right? Whether it's um, growing up in foster care, being from a divorce parent, someone who doesn't mind openly admitting that they have struggled severely with depression, yet they're a clinician, you know. So there are whatever you can bring and live openly in, that's gonna fast forward your connection to people, right? I don't know that people are looking for general stuff. Like people want to know that there's someone out there who's sort of willing to guide them because they've been through this experience. That's kind of key that people what I see people are looking for. They're looking for something specific and they want someone to bring it to them, not just with letters behind their names, but they want to know that people understand their experience. And so you're right. You can go to where people are gathering because there are a lot of people gathering into spaces where there is no professional insight, and they welcome professionals when they show up in those spaces. Sometimes they're Facebook groups. Sometimes they're in a new clubhouse group. Sometimes they may be in other smaller sessions. So if you're willing to see what people are doing in these spaces, they're not hard to find. And then, of course, if you're willing to set up your own space, then people come to you and it gives you a better idea of what it is that people are really looking for and the best ways that you can serve them.
Hmm. Yeah, that sounds great. It's empowering to hear about you doing this, right? Someone's experience of doing this and being really helpful because this isn't something we hear much about. There's so much
Yeah.
caution about online activity. So having a good example of how someone's doing this, a clinician, is really empowering. So how can people find Talking Trees, your platform, and send people to Talking Trees that could use support with a history of abuse?
Yeah, talkingtreesurvivors.com. Just remembering both are plural. Talkingtreesurvivors.com. And I will say, people can do it in a variety of ways. And if people are interested, I'm excited if people are interested. Like if people, because I know if people are interested, they'll figure out how to make it work for themselves. But I do think is important for clinicians to make sure that you have that website in place that connects you to the social media platforms. Like that's one way to maintain a sense of professionalism, if you will, as opposed to just going in and opening up a Facebook page or putting out things on IG. Having that developing that website to show what it is that you teach and what it is that you stand for is important, because um, that's the permanent space, so people can always refer back to see what you're about, and you can always make that clearer than just being in a Facebook page and posting there, because those posts are going to be limited. But what you believe about healing, whatever it is, or addressing that issue, that should be stated somewhere specific, right? Not just in a blog or something like that. That changes regularly. So talkingtreesurvivors.com. And if you go to talkingtreesurvivors.com, it'll get you'll have access to the Facebook group and some other links. So
Excellent. Thank you very much. And really appreciate that the work that you're doing and sharing with us, giving us a glimpse of what that looks like to advocate and provide support online through social media.
thank you. My pleasure.
All right, that'll do it.